When Emily Carter and Jake Thompson vanished at Burning Man, no one could imagine the dark secrets they had stumbled into, a hidden world of fire, ritual, and disappearances that the festival desperately tried to hide. The Nevada desert is a place of extremes, where the heat during the day can scorch the skin and the nights bring an eerie, bone-chilling cold. Every year, tens of thousands of people gather in the Black Rock Desert for Burning Man, a festival that promises freedom, creativity, and escape from the ordinary. The air fills with the scent of dust and the hum of engines, music, and laughter. Brightly colored tents dot the barren landscape, enormous art installations rise from the flat desert floor, and people dressed in fantastical costumes roam the grounds. From the outside, it looks like a celebration of life and imagination, a world apart from normal rules and routines. But in 2023, something happened that no one expected, something that would stain the festival's reputation forever. It began with small, almost unnoticeable details. Festival goers would mention seeing someone at their camp one moment and then vanish the next, only to be found wandering elsewhere with no memory of how they got there. Phones and personal belongings appeared abandoned, tents were left partially collapsed, and security cameras, which were meant to monitor safety, caught gaps in footage where time seemed to skip. At first, it was easy to dismiss it. The desert is confusing, disorienting, and chaotic. People get lost all the time. But when more than a dozen reports surfaced of people who never returned, whispers started to spread among those who stayed behind. The rumor began quietly at first, in hushed tones near fire pits and behind makeshift bars. People spoke of strange figures seen late at night, of campfires burning in isolation where no one had set them, and of shadows moving against the horizon in impossible ways. Local authorities had heard these stories before, but always dismissed them as exaggerations or hallucinations caused by heat, fatigue, or substances. This time, however, the evidence was too tangible to ignore. Drone footage revealed empty spaces where groups of campers had pitched tents just hours earlier. Personal items lay scattered across the sand, some half buried, as if deliberately abandoned. And there were the fires, small, isolated, and oddly placed, that burned with a chemical smell no one could identify. Investigators sent to the festival were met with an unusual silence. Staff seemed cooperative but nervous, avoiding questions and redirecting attention to the festival's creative aspects. As they walked through abandoned campsites, they began to notice subtle signs of struggle. Tents were torn or cut open, footprints led in circles, and some belongings were charred as if someone tried to erase evidence. The sense of unease grew with every step. It was clear that something was happening that no one wanted the public to see. By the end of the festival, it was no longer just a series of strange incidents. It had become a mystery. The disappearances, the odd fires, and the scattered belongings painted a disturbing picture. The desert that had always seemed vast and open now felt like a trap, concealing secrets beneath its scorching sun and cold nights. Those who left carried their memories with them, uneasy and unsure what they had witnessed. The whispers began to spread beyond the desert, carrying a single, chilling message. Beneath the art, the music, and the freedom, something dark lurked at Burning Man, something powerful enough that no one dared to talk about it openly. Investigators quickly realized that the festival's surface appearance was deceiving. To most attendees, Burning Man was a chaotic but harmless celebration of creativity, art, and community. Beyond the colorful tents and towering art installations, however, a different reality existed. Certain areas were off-limits, marked by signs that warned of private property or restricted access. Security in these zones was unusually strict, with guards who watched every movement and cameras that seemed to disappear into walls. Even drones, which had captured much of the festival from above, could not penetrate the shadows surrounding these hidden sections. Investigators began to wonder if these restrictions were merely for privacy, or if they concealed something far more sinister. The investigation turned to the festival's internal workings. Staff members, who outwardly appeared friendly and helpful, were not forthcoming. Background checks revealed missing records, unexplained gaps in employment history, and, in some cases, sudden departures without notice. Some former staff were reported missing entirely, their disappearances quietly excused or buried in paperwork. Investigators uncovered emails between organizers discussing incidents and personnel who needed to be managed discreetly. The messages were vague but ominous, hinting that dangerous or illegal activity had been deliberately hidden. The most alarming discoveries came from footage captured at the festival's edges. Hidden cameras and drones recorded late-night activity that no casual attendee would see. Hooded figures moved in precise formations around small fires, their actions ritualistic and deliberate. At one point, a figure was seen throwing a bundle into a flame, stepping back as the fire roared unnaturally high. Forensic analysis later confirmed what investigators had feared: traces of human remains mixed with the ash. The footage suggested that these acts were neither accidental nor spontaneous. They were calculated, hidden, and intended to be secret. Interviews with anonymous attendees revealed terrifying experiences. One participant recalled accidentally stumbling upon a secluded camp late at night. The scene was unsettling. Hooded figures circled a fire, chanting softly, while the air smelled of chemicals and smoke. The attendee described feeling trapped, as though the performers knew she had seen too much. She managed to escape, but the memory haunted her. Others shared similar accounts, noting that the festival's busy, chaotic environment made it easy for such events to go unnoticed by most participants. The investigators began to see a pattern. Disappearances were not random. They followed the festival's busiest nights when attention was divided. Campsites located on the periphery were targeted, leaving personal items behind to create confusion. Fires, which were meant to be artistic expressions, became staging grounds for acts designed to intimidate or harm. The organizers, intentionally or not, provided cover for these activities through their structure and secrecy. It was a chilling revelation. Beneath the festival's image of creativity and freedom existed a shadow network, exploiting the chaos and the crowd to carry out hidden, often deadly acts. With each new discovery, the sense of dread grew. What attendees had thought of as a safe, open environment was, in reality, a place where boundaries were blurred and secrets could thrive. The investigators realized that uncovering the truth would not only expose criminal acts, but also challenge the very foundation of a festival celebrated around the world. The edges of Burning Man were no longer merely artistic spaces. They were a warning, a glimpse into something the public had been kept from seeing. As investigators delved deeper, the festival's chaos began to reveal a disturbing pattern. What had seemed like random disappearances now looked methodical. Certain attendees were targeted while others remained untouched, and the timing was precise, often coinciding with the nights when the desert was most crowded and noisy. It was as if someone had studied the flow of the festival, learning exactly when and where people would be most vulnerable. The more the investigators uncovered, the clearer it became that these acts were intentional, not accidental. Evidence suggested that the periphery of the festival, the areas farthest from the main stage and popular installations, had become hunting grounds. Abandoned tents showed signs of forced entry, footprints led to nowhere and back again, and personal items were often left behind, as if to mislead anyone searching for the missing. Investigators discovered traces of substances and chemicals unfamiliar to the desert environment, raising questions about what had been done to the victims before they disappeared. Some victims were later found in remote areas of the desert, their bodies altered in ways that made it difficult to identify the cause of death. Others were never found at all, leaving families with nothing but uncertainty and anguish. The investigation also revealed a network of people who exploited the festival for their own purposes. They were not random attendees, but insiders with access, knowledge, and the means to manipulate the environment without drawing attention. These individuals used the festival's scale and anonymity to cover their tracks. Some were involved in illegal trades, while others appeared to be part of a more organized, cult-like system, where secrecy and obedience were enforced with fear. Certain documents suggested connections to wealthy collectors and shadowy groups who valued control over exposure, turning the festival into a place where danger hid behind every corner. Witness accounts painted a terrifying picture. A former attendee recalled wandering near the edge of a hidden camp late one night. What she saw was an elaborate ritual, staged to appear as performance art, but it carried a menacing undertone. Hooded figures circled a fire, handling materials with careful precision, and the way the fire burned was unnatural, as if fueled by something more than wood or gasoline. The experience left her shaken, convinced that the spectacle had been intended to frighten and assert control over anyone who might stumble upon it. Others described being approached in subtle ways, led toward remote areas under the guise of experiencing art, only to escape by luck or instinct. The investigators soon realized that the festival's management, knowingly or unknowingly, played a role in shielding these activities. Restricted zones, heavy security, and the sheer complexity of the event made it nearly impossible for outside authorities to monitor. Attempts to confront organizers with evidence were met with deflection, legal threats, or dismissals framed as paranoia. It became increasingly clear that exposing the truth would not be easy. Those orchestrating these acts had created a system designed to operate invisibly, taking advantage of the festival's ideals of freedom and self-expression while hiding a darker reality beneath the dust and lights. With each discovery, the sense of danger intensified. The desert was no longer just a backdrop for art and music. It was a stage for deliberate manipulation and control. The missing were not victims of chance. They were part of a larger, hidden narrative that few would dare to uncover. As the investigation progressed, the line between festival celebration and criminal enterprise blurred, revealing a secret side of Burning Man that threatened the very image of its utopian promise. As investigators followed the trail deeper into the festival's hidden layers, the scope of what had been occurring became terrifyingly clear. Burning Man was not just a place of art and freedom, it had become a stage for manipulation, exploitation, and carefully concealed criminal activity. Every clue uncovered seemed to connect to another secret, revealing a network of individuals who took advantage of the festival's chaos to carry out acts that few could imagine. Evidence pointed to wealthy collectors and shadowy groups who used the festival as a hunting ground, preying on vulnerable participants while hiding behind the festival's massive crowd and sprawling environment. Records suggested that some of these individuals had long-standing ties to the festival, occupying positions that gave them access to restricted areas and influence over security protocols. Their reach was extensive, and their methods sophisticated. Investigators found encrypted messages and carefully coded plans that detailed how to isolate victims, ensure they were unnoticed, and dispose of any trace of wrongdoing. The sophistication of the network suggested that these acts were not spontaneous or opportunistic. They were carefully calculated over years. Several anonymous attendees described experiences that added layers of horror to the investigators' findings. One person recalled being guided toward an isolated fire on the edge of the desert, where hooded figures moved in patterns that seemed ritualistic. The fire burned unnaturally, consuming materials that were later confirmed to include human remains. The attendee described a suffocating sense of fear, realizing that the performance was designed not for art, but for intimidation and control. Others described narrow escapes, finding themselves led into hidden tents or structures under the pretense of exclusive experiences, only to flee when they realized the danger. Attempts to expose the truth ran into powerful resistance. The festival's organizers, whether aware of the full extent of the activities or not, wielded their influence to suppress investigations. Legal threats, public relations campaigns, and an overwhelming narrative of creativity and celebration framed any allegations as conspiracy theories. Authorities who attempted to intervene were met with obstruction and disinformation, making it difficult to secure arrests or prosecutions. The festival's very image of freedom, self-expression, and art became a shield, hiding actions that were methodical, cruel, and deeply secretive. Investigators began mapping patterns of disappearances and hidden activities. Peripheral campsites and less traveled paths were repeatedly implicated, with signs of forced entry, abandoned belongings, and chemical residues. The timing of incidents was precise, taking advantage of nights with the highest attendance and the most distractions. Evidence suggested that the perpetrators had carefully studied the festival for years, learning how to exploit its rhythms to carry out their schemes without detection. It was no longer just a series of strange disappearances. It was a coordinated system designed to operate in plain sight, hidden beneath the festival's public face. The reality became undeniable. Burning Man's open and artistic appearance was a carefully maintained illusion. Behind the music, fire, and art installations lurked an organized web of control and secrecy. Attendees who wandered too close to the edges risked becoming part of something far more dangerous than the desert AI's harsh elements. What had begun as an investigation into missing persons transformed into an exposure of a complex network, one that thrived by exploiting the very ideals the festival claimed to uphold. The shadows of the desert were no longer merely natural. They were engineered, deliberate, and lethal, and the truth was a warning few were prepared to hear. By the time the investigation reached its final stages, the full scope of what had occurred at Burning Man was staggering. The festival, celebrated worldwide as a haven for creativity and freedom, had been a carefully orchestrated backdrop for manipulation, exploitation, and violence. Investigators had identified some of the perpetrators, individuals who had used the festival's scale, anonymity, and complexity to operate with near impunity. Yet many more remained hidden, protected by influence, secrecy, and a system designed to prevent the truth from surfacing. Families of the missing were left with nothing but uncertainty, and a lingering sense of dread clung to those who had attended. The desert, which had once seemed open and liberating, was revealed as a place where the boundaries between safety and danger were intentionally blurred. Peripheral campsites, restricted zones, and seemingly harmless art installations had been transformed into tools for intimidation and control. Evidence showed that fires, once symbols of artistic expression, were being used to destroy evidence and instill fear. Victims were carefully isolated, targeted during the busiest nights when crowds and chaos made them vulnerable. Some were found years later in remote desert locations, their lives taken in ways that left investigators piecing together fragments of horror. Others were never recovered, their fates sealed beneath the sand and secrecy. The investigation also uncovered how power and money had shielded many of the responsible parties. Certain wealthy individuals and influential festival insiders exploited the event to prey on unsuspecting attendees. Threats, bribes, and complex legal maneuvers kept investigators at bay, while a public relations machine ensured that any mention of wrongdoing was quickly dismissed as conspiracy or exaggeration. The festival's brand, reputation, and economic impact created a layer of protection that was nearly impenetrable. It became clear that exposing the full truth would take years, if it was ever possible at all. Despite the obstacles, some witnesses bravely shared their experiences, painting a terrifying picture of what lay beneath the festival's surface. They described nightmarish rituals disguised as art, the methodical targeting of individuals, and the calculated use of fire and isolation to manipulate fear. These accounts revealed a side of Burning Man that most attendees would never imagine. A network of people using the principles of freedom and self-expression to hide acts that were cruel, calculated, and deadly. In the end, the festival continued, drawing thousands of visitors each year, unaware of the shadows that lingered just out of sight. The investigation left behind more questions than answers. The missing, the threats, and the hidden ceremonies were reminders that beneath the glittering lights, music, and art, a darker reality persisted. Burning Man remained a place of wonder for some, but for those who had glimpsed the truth, it was a place of caution. The desert whispered a silent warning. Not everything is what it seems, and some fires are meant to burn more than just wood. The story of what happened became part of the festival's hidden mythology, a chilling reminder that even in a place built on freedom and imagination, shadows can thrive, and secrets can remain buried beneath the sand. For those who dared to look closer, the message was clear. Some things are better left unseen, and some truths are far too dangerous to expose. The desert kept its secrets, and Burning Man continued, its lights bright, its art mesmerizing, but its darkest stories hidden from view.